Welcome back to another episode of the Wavelength. Hope you guys enjoyed the last one. I don't know if I did or not.
I did.
The blind dating episode.
I definitely did.
You did?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Good for you. No, honestly, I had a lot of fun with it. That was a super cool way to like just meet people based off like straight vibes.
Yeah.
You know?
Straight connection. And
Yeah.
it was authentic.
Yeah.
It was great.
Everybody was great. It was hard cutting people. I'm not going to lie. That was tough for me. Yeah.
It was. But this episode that we're doing now, I think is a perfect segue after that monstrosity.
It is. It sure is. So we've got a good episode for you guys today. I feel like we've been hyping this episode a little bit up since we started this podcast.
Have someone like you come on for a while.
So this episode is all about relationships, and we have a certified relationship coach on, and her name is Gabriella Karp. Sorry.
It's all right.
Almost like Clark. We just confirm that. But so I'm gonna let Gabriella introduce herself and kind of give a rundown on your journey.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. So I'm a relationship coach. I kind of got into this field. I think it started really like in my early 20s. I got really into self-development, was super into self-help books and like watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts, figuring out how I can improve my relationships, because when I was younger, I was terribly shy, had a lot of social anxiety, and it wasn't until my first job at a grocery store when I was 16 that I was really challenged to talk to new people all the time. And I had, thankfully, a very supportive group of coworkers who were always encouraging me. And eventually I started coming out of my shell and realizing like, wow, I really actually like
You actually like people?
I actually like people.
I was kind of the same way as a little kid. I've said that before, but I was such a shy little kid, dude.
Yeah. So I was very thankful for that experience, because it really helped me get to know myself a little bit better and realize that, I do want to work on forming better relationships and forming stronger connections with people. So that was kind of the start of my journey in that direction. At some point, I decided that I wanted to become a therapist because I really enjoyed helping people. I really enjoyed holding space for people and creating a safe space for them to really like figure out what's going on for them and feel uncomfortable emotions. And so I decided to go back to school and got my degree in psychology. At some point towards the end of my degree, I decided that the route of therapy didn't completely resonate with how I wanted to help people. So I pivoted. I looked into coaching because I had heard about it. I found some local coaches in my area and asked them to get some coffee, pick their brains. And when I learned about their experiences being a coach and having their own business being a coach, I was like, yes, like this is what feels authentic for me. So I found a program in relationship coaching and became certified, and it's been a really fantastic experience so far.
Incredible.
Yeah. So you never went like the full therapist route or anything? Like you were never in a company, or like it's always been you're working for yourself ever since you've done this?
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I never had any training with business or marketing or anything like that. So it's a completely new venture for me.
Right. It's interesting to have to throw those two things together at the same time when you do your own thing, right? Yeah, that's something we've experienced and what we're still experiencing. So it's hard. That's admirable, though.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing what about the typical therapy realm that kind of threw you off a little bit, made you want to pivot?
For sure. Yeah. It's really how we use the diagnostic model in the mental health field. It can feel limiting at times, and sometimes like the opposite of empowering, because and not always, but sometimes when someone is diagnosed with something, they might take it as like, oh well, this is just who I am, and I'm just going to struggle with this forever, or I'm now dependent on this medication in order for me to function in the society. And that didn't really feel good to me, because like personally, like I struggled a lot in school. Like I never got diagnosed with ADHD, but I had a really hard time staying motivated and just wanting to do homework, staying focused in class. So I always felt like there was something wrong with me. And I actually tried to get diagnosed with ADHD before I decided to go back to school, because I was so scared of failing. And I thought that being medicated would help me succeed.
Yeah.
You know? And I didn't get diagnosed. And that was a huge bummer for me. But I decided I was going to go to school anyways. And I'm so glad that I didn't get diagnosed, because it was such a great challenge for me to like see like, okay, you know, maybe I wasn't supported in the way that I needed to, like back in grade school, to really succeed. And, you know, it's not necessarily that I wasn't like curious or loved to learn or was intelligent, but rather I just didn't feel engaged in the ways that I needed to.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of how I feel like these struggles that we experience with our mental health, or just kind of like fitting into society, it's not always helpful to just be like, okay, well, you have these symptoms, is this medication.
Right. I'm with that.
Systemizing everything doesn't work.
It's like putting a blanket over everything, and every individual is different. So, right, like you said, it's like jumping straight to the diagnosis without actually diving in to somebody.
Right.
It can, you know, be a little dangerous sometimes. So that's big of you, and very, you know, far-sighted, I guess, or I don't know what the word is. You're thinking ahead, or like jumping ahead in your mind to...
Yeah. I think, you know, all it takes sometimes is just a little bit more curiosity of like, okay, so like, well, what's going on here?
Right.
Like, you know, for me, like I had to ask myself when I was struggling in school, like, okay, I know that I'm curious. I know that I'm really interested in the subject. So why do I have so much anxiety when I think about doing my homework?
Yeah.
And when I thought about it long enough and I reflected long enough, I realized it was more a performance-based fear than me not wanting to do the work. So
you were worried about the outcome?
Yeah, I was so afraid of failing. Yeah.
Like that.
Been there.
Yeah, definitely
Been there. So like now that you're doing though, like what you love and you're passionate about, like do you like mind working, or like do you just like love what you do and like you're taking on new clients and everything and super passionate about it? Like life is good.
That's a good question. I feel like it's been coming in waves. Sometimes I feel so energized and like, wow, like I'm so excited to like be able to have the space to create something out of all of my ideas. And sometimes I just go through a phase of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm shooting in the dark here.
I completely resonate.
Well, we've talked about that on a previous episode too. Like it comes in waves, like a negative thought will just hit you and you'll be like, oh my God, I'm going to like fail. This is stupid or whatever. And then the next day it's like, it's not stupid.
Right.
Like
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's just
like
fun.
Two sides to the coin of doing your own, to like carving your own path. It's like, cool, I get to carve my own path and go the direction I want. But then it's like, wait, I have to freaking knock down every little weed along the way to carve the path. It's like, it's all about how you look at it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, and I'm with you, like some days I'm like, man, if I did nothing right now, like nothing would move forward. So then it's a lot of pressure on your shoulders. And then then some days it's like, wait, I get to do things today to move myself forward and I'm not held back. I'm with that. I resonate with that 100%.
Yeah. Well, you two are never in corporate America, but like that's how it is sometimes. See, it is when you're doing the same thing every day that's like not for yourself and you just have to go do it, and it truly is like a job. Like it's so unsatisfying compared to like this type of stuff. Or like, you know, if you're doing something for yourself that you're passionate about, like it's just a whole different world. Like it's still hard for sure, but it's just so different.
Yeah. I think we're all like-minded in that aspect though. we like to talk to people like you that have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, I guess, and you're connected with what is actually true to you. So I appreciate that about you. So thanks for coming. I feel like it's going to be a good conversation. I can already tell.
Yeah,
I'm already like, every single thing you say, I'm like,
yeah, makes sense.
Well, we wanted to, we have a couple questions for you into different areas of your job and certain things that maybe you've seen in couples and relationships, because we all know that, a lot of people know that Alex and I have struggled in the past with, relationships. We've had our good, we've had our bad, and, we got to see a lot of Alex's in that last episode. A lot of emotions, a lot of things going on that maybe some people have commented on.
Yeah.
I think you did a good job.
Thanks.
I think you did a good job. But we're hard on ourselves sometimes.
They learned a lot about me. I had to get asked 50 questions that night.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It was crazy. And I don't know how you did it.
It was crazy.
So we're still coming down from that. But yeah, so this episode really is, it's a lot for us, but we also want to kind of toss some things up to you to see if you have any sort of advice for the general public or just people out there that maybe have struggled in relationships, struggled with feeling confident enough to put themselves out there, anything in that realm. So I guess my first question that I was really thinking about is there the most common with when you're dealing with a relationship that is already existing, is there something that is super common these days that you have seen that pops up more than any other thing, like a certain problem that you see a lot?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest problems that I see a lot is, first of all, not being in alignment with your authentic self. And that also ties into not advocating for your needs, not advocating for your boundaries, and possibly feeling stuck in a relationship, feeling like you need to be a certain version of yourself, as opposed to being loved and accepted for who you are.
Bingo.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, definitely.
Been there.
Yeah, and sometimes we put ourselves in this trap because we feel like we need to, show our best selves or a version of ourselves to be attractive. But then we're in a relationship with that person, and months, years down the line, now we're feeling anxious, now we're feeling resentful because we don't feel like we can just be honest with our needs and what we want in a relationship, or just to show up authentically with the person that you spend the most time with.
Maintain that character that you had built to put on a facade for that person.
Yeah, because then when your true self does come out eventually, because it will, it has to, it surfaces, then you're like, this isn't working, or this isn't going to work.
So that's something common that you see a lot these days?
Yeah.
In younger people or?
Everyone.
Everybody.
Everywhere?
Yeah. I've worked with clients who usually ranging from 30s to about 50s. Mm-hmm. And, I see that usually there's a kind of in your 30s, you start kind of thinking about this more of I'm not really feeling fulfilled in my relationships. I could keep getting the same patterns. But yeah, it is interesting also getting clients that are in their 50s realizing wow, I've been in this relationship for this long and I'm feeling unhappy.
That's so sad to me. You get
back to the root of it. And,
yeah.
That's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years. Yeah, that's sad to me. If people don't ever feel like themselves in a relationship and they just do it because they think they have to, or it's just been so long that whatever. I don't know. That's hard.
I think a lot of people don't even realize that there's an alternative path.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Feeling stuck. Yeah. It's always hard to, and if you have a friend that's stuck in a relationship, it's always so hard to navigate that too, because it's I feel like I've been in that situation where it's I know this person needs to get out of this for their well-being, but it's how do you say that without,
You're talking about me?
I'm not talking about you. I'm not. I swear. Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, a couple times.
Times. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard as a friend to be that person, because you want to be that person to offer up advice, but you don't want to go over the line and, trigger them, and then they're angry at you.
It's a hard line. It's so hard because you want to be the good friend that is dude, I care about you or whatever. And want to tell them hey, this person is not helping you. But at the same time, it's I've been in this situation too where people are telling me like, hey, this relationship isn't for you. And it's really like messed me up. And I'm like, but I want it. So like on the other side of that, it's been hard to like differentiate of like what's right, what's wrong, who do I listen to?
Yeah.
So
do I listen to myself? Do I listen to my heart?
Yeah. So part of me is like, I don't know if I want to put people in that position of me telling them their girlfriend or boyfriend sucks. But
probably best to just direct everybody.
Yeah, we'll send them to you.
Yeah, how do you do that?
I mean, that's also tricky because like not everybody will do well with coaching, and you know, you have to like want to be there. You have to want to do the work and like look at the uncomfortable feelings and patterns.
And that's so
you got to be open. Like you have to be open to
absolutely.
And that I feel like in that scenario.
Yeah.
It's the same with therapy. Like if you just go to therapy, if you don't say anything and they ask you questions, like
you're not going
to get anything out of it.
Put in.
Yeah.
Or some people go to therapy looking for just validation.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, well, have you looked at your part?
Right. They just want someone to be like, you're awesome.
Yeah.
I have tried to make my therapist laugh in the past.
Yeah,
a little bit too much.
Oh, me too.
Too many jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with that. So what on the other side of the coin, what are some things that you've seen in relationships that are successful, or like maybe not that you've seen, or what is something that you would say is something that can lead to a successful long-term relationship in these days?
Yeah. Something that really stuck out to me in my relationship coach training was learning the 4 core needs of a secure relationship. And those are to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel soothed, and to feel supported. And when I read that, I was just like, wow, okay, this feels like super helpful for me to reflect on, because those 4 needs can look differently for each person. So I think it's really important for everybody to reflect on how they feel safe, seen, soothed, and supported, and to communicate that to their partner or to just anybody that's close to them, because then they can better support them and help them feel safe. And that is how we can co-create a secure relationship.
Just knowledge of someone else.
Yeah.
They're like the love languages, right? So I've always said like people have different ways of receiving love, right? And different ways of giving it. And maybe the way someone receives it isn't the way someone gives it, and vice versa.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes when you're not able to adapt to somebody else's love language, then that can leave the other person feeling lonely or abandoned.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other person's like, I've been putting out my love language the whole time. What do you mean? You're not receiving it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Another thing is knowing the other person's insecurities. And that can feel really vulnerable, but that's also another key part of having a successful relationship. Like, you need to be vulnerable with that person, because ultimately, like, we are very emotional beings, and if we are like guarding ourselves and like not letting our partners in, then there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding of like, why does your partner behave this way? Why do I behave this way? The more that we can fill each other in of like what hurts us, what excites us, what motivates us, how we feel loved, the better that we can come together and have a happy, fulfilling relationship.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, in like a past relationship, I felt like I didn't really know what she wanted. So like, I was like, all right, like I'm going to go try and like make friends. Like, let's go out, let's go on these dates, whatever. But like, I didn't know if she was ever happy doing that. But I was guessing the whole time. So that was something that was really tough for me. But on the other side too, in past relationships on my end, like I wouldn't say what I wanted. Like I would just be going with the flow and trying to people please and do whatever, when in reality it was I didn't want to do some things. And she would get confused when I was like not happy and didn't want to do this, and I would get resentful. But it was because I wasn't saying what I wanted and actually wanted to do and wanted in a relationship.
Not communicating.
So yeah, for sure. So that makes complete sense.
Yeah. It's really interesting, like how a lot of us are conditioned not to speak directly about what we want and what we need, or to ask other people what they want and need. So we have to play this guessing game all the time.
Right.
But then we're just like, are you happy? Like, do you want me? And it's just, it's not really great.
No, it's like one of the hardest feelings ever.
Right. It's like, why are we playing this little tennis match here of like this guessing game? It's like, where's the stigma around just being direct? Like, where did that fall off along our, I don't know, communication styles, where it's just way cooler or whatever to just be guessing games? That doesn't make sense.
I mean, that's another way that we protect our vulnerability.
Yeah.
Is by being very like mysterious, or like, not showing all your cards.
Interesting. There's also like these attachment styles, right?
Yeah.
That different people have. So you wrote that down. So I don't really understand attachment styles too much. Do you want to speak on
It's like
attachment styles?
The two I know are anxious attachment and avoidant.
Okay.
So like an anxious, you don't know those?
Oh, really? I don't really understand.
I don't know. They started popping up on my Instagram reels after this last breakup, and like, I actually don't know which one I am, to be honest. I feel like I float back and forth. But yeah, like there's either avoidant attachment or anxious attachment.
Yeah. Well, to add to that, those are two insecure attachment styles.
Okay.
And there is like just a general secure attachment style.
Okay.
So secure attachment would mean, both people are able to have like a healthy connection, which includes a good amount of closeness and also separation. There's healthy communication. They're able to resolve conflict well. There's respect. There's love, boundaries. And then there are a couple insecure attachment styles that you mentioned, anxious and avoidant. There's also disorganized, which is actually a kind of a mix of the two. But the more common ones are talked about are anxious and avoidant. So anxious attachment style, you more commonly will see it in women. And,
Anxious?
Yeah, anxious. And that looks like, I need validation all the time. I need you around all the time. I need you to tell me that you love me, that you want me. And I also feel like I need to take care of you and make sure that you're okay, because if you're okay, then I'm okay.
Yep.
And, if I take care of your emotions and you're not getting upset because I'm taking care of you, then, we have a safe connection, and that's what I want.
Yeah. So is that where like if one little bad thing happens, like you kind of like an anxious attachment would like freak out, try and fix everything, and like basically make the other person happy first before themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely a sense of like you're kind of abandoning yourself, and you care more about saving the relationship than like your own sense of self.
And if it's even healthy to save the relationship in the first place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then avoidant is kind of opposite in the way that they feel like anxious when someone is like getting too close, or they want too much of them. They're more scared of losing themselves than the relationship. And it's really interesting because anxious and avoidant types tend to attract each other.
I was just going to say, do those two things, is that like some kind of symbiotic relationship right there? Those things, those attachment styles just go together?
Yeah, they attract each other. And it's interesting because it can actually be a really great way to grow and to heal your attachment style, because anxious attachments, they see people with avoidant attachments and they're like, when they meet them, they're like, wow, you're so independent, like you're so like passionate about what you do, and they're attracted to that because they see that and they're like, wow, I want that too. And avoidance might look at people who are anxiously attached and be like, wow, like this person is very like vulnerable and like in touch with their emotions, like I want that too.
Yeah.
But when they get too close, they trigger each other, and they're not able to, like unless they're doing the work and like reflecting on their triggers, it often ends up being a unhealthy relationship.
Okay.
Can lead to the secure one.
Can you have both?
What do you mean?
Because like
attachments.
Yes, I feel like I definitely lean more. I mean, if I actually like feel it, I would say I lean more towards an anxious attacher. But like, there's part of me that is definitely like on the avoidance side too. Like sometimes when people get too close, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to mess anything up. I'm happy myself right now. Like, I don't want to.
Maybe being in one and then will force you to go to the other one.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I heard somebody else talking about this kind of earlier today, actually. They were differentiating the difference between like having both and being primarily one and having like avoidant tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, maybe you're dating somebody and you're actually just not really interested.
Yeah.
So you might, instead of being direct and being like, hey, like, I don't want to see you anymore, you might just be avoidant.
That makes sense.
Hang on.
Yeah. This stuff's interesting.
Yeah, I'm like deep in thought now.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to say, I don't know which one you are.
But I feel like every relationship can bring out a different attachment style in people. Am I wrong? Or like, is everyone just, you know, like, is like person A is just always secure, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely not the case. So we learn our attachment styles through our primary caregivers when we're growing up, but those can change. And, you know, someone who grew up with a secure attachment style, maybe they have like an abusive relationship down the road that makes them feel more anxiously attached or avoidant. And it can be the same with if you ended up, you know, developing a insecure attachment style. You can learn to develop a secure attachment.
If you meet somebody that already feels secure in themselves, it can bring the best out of you.
Yes. Yeah. Also, it could possibly scare you away if you're not ready to meet them there.
Fair. Because then you're like looking intrinsically at yourself and being like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not there. And then
I feel like I'm in a therapy session right now. I'm like, I'm just like thinking about my shit.
Everything resonates?
Oh, yeah. No,
those are your only two ones that you've even done research on, huh? Those two attachment styles.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't even know there was other ones. Yeah.
You didn't even know there was a secure one?
No, I was just looking at the bad ones. That's all that popped up.
Come on. That's the Instagram algorithm.
Yeah, that's the algorithm hitting me.
Attachment out there.
All right.
There is. It is possible. Yeah. That's good to know. That's good to know, man.
Would you know which one you are? Do you have one?
I don't know. I think it's been different for me in different relationships.
Yeah.
I feel like I've definitely been more the anxious attachment side in a past relationship where I felt like I always just had to prove myself. That's the one. Or like put myself, like you talked about earlier, like put on a character in a way to live up to what I think they're expecting.
Yeah.
And I just get so far away from it that didn't feel like myself anymore. Definitely been there. But I mean, recently, I feel like now that I know I've been that way, I took some time to kind of get back to myself before I jumped into another relationship.
Nice.
You know, so I feel like I'm in a pretty secure spot myself now, which is really fun.
No, I'd agree with that. You're for sure like in the secure one.
Yeah. Like, I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Can I ask
you
a question?
Yeah.
What did you do to take care of yourself in between relationships?
I just did a lot of therapy. Just reconnected with a lot of old friends that I hadn't seen in a while, like this guy.
Nice.
Took a lot of time for myself, tried new things, you know, stuff like that. I just really took the time and just dove in head first. Like I had a therapist tell me one time, instead of, like I used to just bury things down deep and not address them at all. And I had a therapist tell me, like, if you're riding a motorcycle and you start fishtailing, you don't like turn the direction that, you know, you're spinning towards. You turn the handlebars right directly in the opposite direction and just face it head on. So I just started doing that and it helped.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel like more prepared then, like in your next relationship?
Definitely. Yeah. I felt just more secure in myself and more confident. That's what it was, I think. I was just more confident. Yeah. So I got into a long relationship, like early 20s, and my life was just completely in a different, like changed overnight, basically, in in a way, and I didn't have any sort of foundation of myself anymore. And I was in like this weird experiment of a TV show. I was just like, it's called Big Brother. It's nuts. So I was in no place to be in a secure relationship. But then after coming out of that on the other side and learning, what I did wrong, what was wrong with that, and it helped me kind of land back on my feet, get back to myself. So yeah, it was helpful.
So like with that, I mean, what you guys are talking about, like, is there a certain sauce to getting over like a past relationship and making yourself better, or like
honestly,
just what
what you did is like what I would recommend, like
just focusing on yourself.
Yeah, just like realigning with who you are, and just like exploring, seeing what you get excited about, and like what kind of lifestyle that you want. Because the closer that you are to like really knowing who you are, what excites you, and what you want out of life, then you can better find a partner who
matches what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not trying to match someone else and like lose yourself in that, because
right.
Yeah. I mean, I've been through a breakup a little more recently than Tyler, but I feel like that's what I've done super well this time is like, I kind of flipped my whole life around, but I feel like that's what I've done really well is just like focus on myself, trying to make myself better. Just kind of like turn the pain. I think this is like a off opinion of mine, but I think like sometimes pain and all that stuff can be a good thing as long as you use it in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Like I've just tried to like turn it into something else and use it to like motivate myself, like get in the gym, figure out what you like to do, like change my life around and make myself a better person. So yeah, I mean, I fully agree with that. And it's helped a ton, honestly. Once I started doing that, it's okay to be sad for a little bit, but like once I started doing that, that's where I really felt like a shift in me as a person. Mm. So
you're shifting.
I'm shifting. Yeah, I'm shifting. But
viewers are seeing it too. They notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I love what you said about like, turning that pain into something, because
you can't let it consume you. Like when I felt it consuming me, that's where like, all right, I gotta get out of here. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too that I've thought about just in this last few months is like something that's I feel like it's helped me. So I want to know your opinion on this, but like I didn't turn it on the other person. Like I stopped thinking of like, why do they want me, or like having negative thoughts about them. It was more of like, I turned it on like full account, which is harder to do in my opinion, but I turned it like full accountability on myself. Like, what did I do that didn't make me a good partner? Or like, what did I do wrong that can make me a better person in the long run? Learn from this situation and bring it into the next one and bring it into my life in general. So that's helped me. On turning it on yourself is an interesting, I feel like, thing to do. But knowing what, even if they admitted like what they felt or whatever, that's not going to help your self-esteem or anything like that. Like them saying that they don't want you is not gonna help anything. I think you need to turn it inward, like you said, and just like take accountability for the things you did wrong and move on from that and just make yourself better.
For sure.
I get so excited when people like you talk about that and realize that there's way more power in taking accountability, and like, yeah, like that breakup sucked, maybe that relationship sucked, but like now we can like go back and reflect, like how can I improve? Like what are the things that I struggled with that I can work on so that I don't keep struggling with this in future relationships?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be all negative. Like turning it on yourself sounds weird in a way. Like you don't want to talk bad about yourself.
Right.
But looking intrinsically, like it, and sometimes it is like, oh yeah, I did do this wrong. Yep. Or like I wasn't listening at this part in the relationship and didn't whatever. But at the same time, like it can even be more deep than that. Like, hey, why did I accept that little of love, or like that little of respect, or whatever the case is? And I'm not saying this this was part of my past relationships, but like just accepting like certain factors and like just looking at yourself and being like, why did I think that was okay? Yeah. So
that's why they say that, because I feel like I have in the past put everything on myself first, and then I had to learn to take that off. So the opposite of what you said.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I used to only blame every issue that was going on myself.
But I do that too. But there's been points where I'm like,
why balance? Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, why is this happening to me? Like, why didn't they like me or whatever like that? And it's, I don't think it's good like verbiage in your own head. I think you have to be like, okay, like this is what I did wrong and what I need to bring into a new relationship and what I don't want in a person. Right. I mean, no offense like to anybody, but
for sure.
Yeah,
I'm with that. I think I had to take all the things that I used to put on myself and like reshuffle them and put them in different piles and be like, wait, okay, maybe that's something I can work on, but then maybe this was just some nonsense that someone was being mean, you know? Like,
which is fair. I mean, it can be fair. Like if you know something that they were doing wrong, like it's you don't have to own everything. But I just think putting on yourself and taking accountability and learning from that stuff is just, I don't know, it's helped me.
That's my favorite word, accountability.
Yeah, accountability is a great word.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between like blaming yourself and taking accountability for how you, like what was your part in the struggle of a relationship. Because at least when I hear like, you know, I blame myself first, I think of like, oh, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Like I should have done this or that. While taking accountability is like, oh, okay, like let me like really think about what was my part here and what can I improve later down the line. So it's
for the future, not the past. Right. Like you can't look at the things that you like did wrong that you can't change. It's what you need to look at the things in yourself that you can change for the future relationships, not like worry about the past and like, oh, I did this wrong and woe is me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was kind of like a key difference I was trying to highlight. So thank you. Like just, instead of like, ruminating on the past and like, oh, I should have done these things. Yeah. Like what can I do in the future?
Yeah.
You just unlocked something in my brain when you said there's a difference between blaming yourself and accountability. That's huge.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's enough for me. What else we got for?
Oh man. You wrote this one down. You've kind of talked a little bit about this already, but like importance of authenticity and transparency in relationships by advocating for your needs and boundaries.
Yeah. So kind of speaking from my own experience, I used to really struggle with advocating for my needs and really even like knowing what they were and knowing what my boundaries were.
I was going to ask about that. I was like, I feel like sometimes you don't really know what you need. Right?
Yeah. And it's crazy because like, you know, if you grew up with people close to you who kind of like invalidated your emotions or like minimized your needs or made you feel bad for having those needs, like, oh, like, you know, like if you needed something and like your parents got mad at you for it, that kind of taught you like, okay, my needs are not as important as taking care of this person because, you know, if they get angry at me, then I lose my attachment. Mm-hmm. And attachment as a child that's survival. Like we literally depend on our caretakers to take care of us in order to survive. So it is very much a life or death sensation of like, I need to come up with this strategic version of myself so that I can keep my attachment and survive. And so, I kind of learned a bit to downplay my needs in my relationships because of different aspects of my childhood. And that made it really hard in my romantic relationships later on because I wasn't getting my needs met. I felt really lonely. Like in my early 20s, I was in a 3-year relationship and I wasn't being direct about what I wanted. And I wasn't like sometimes I would say something, but then I would kind of like back off a little bit because I didn't want to rock the boat too much. But eventually I just started like, I don't know, I started like letting him know like, hey, like I'm really having fun that much anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember one time when I told him this, it was like after a date, he said, well, that sucks because I did. And it was really interesting for me to hear because like I didn't remember him like laughing or smiling during that date. And so it was just very confusing for me.
Yeah.
And it also made me question, like, are my standards too high? Like, am I just needing too much? And, you know, eventually I stuck in that relationship long enough to feel like enough pain in order to finally decide to leave. And once I left that relationship, I realized, okay, like, I need to start working on being more direct with my needs and being more upfront with that, especially in the beginning, so that later down the road, I'm not like being like, hey, can you do this thing for me? Like very timidly, or like maybe communicating in a very passive aggressive way. That kind of communication wasn't working out for me. And so, yeah, I just decided to become more of a direct communicator.
Just laying down the line at the front.
Yeah,
I'll have to,
which is good. I mean, that's the best way to do it.
100%.
Yeah.
I get that.
I mean, I've struggled with that a lot too. Just like you said, not rocking the boat and, I don't know, being too much at first or anything like that. I've struggled that with a ton of relationships. Kind of just like, I don't know, conflict is not my best friend sometimes, and I do avoid it on occasion. Sometimes I'm like, if it's a part of me, I'm like, yeah, we'll do it. Let's rumble. But yeah, I've definitely struggled with that, especially in relationships. Like, I don't know, I care about people deeply, especially if I'm getting in like a serious relationship with them. So it's tough for me to like almost have that like line of like where I'm gonna be authentic and direct and say what I need to not rocking the boat and just kind of like going with the flow and seeing how it goes. Yeah. So
yeah, there's definitely a difference between just going with the flow of things and actually being confident and expressing your needs.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think being confident and expressing your needs means you're not going with the flow.
True.
You know, that's maybe a lot of people struggle with that sometimes. I think I have, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you've had experiences in the past where conflict wasn't met with, you know, openness and gentleness. A lot of us have experienced very scary conflict, and conflict that may threaten a relationship. And we're very relationship-oriented beings. So naturally, we want to do what we can to save those relationships. And when we're young, that's usually like the best strategy that we can come up with, is to just adapt to the other person.
Yeah, and going back to what we're talking about, I think a big part of that is being like, you have to be secure in yourself to be able to be direct and confrontational if needed. Because like, there's been times in my life where I'm like, I don't even know if I'm right. Like I have stood up for myself, and I'm like apologizing the next day and being like, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Like there's some times where I'm like, I don't know if I was right or not. So I feel like if I was confident in who I was at that point in my life, I feel like it would have been a totally different scenario and had different feelings. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. Like backtracking on your actual feelings.
Yeah.
So it's like, was I actually feeling that, or was that just a fleeting feeling?
Yeah. Or like a reaction almost. Yeah. Or not knowing self.
Yeah. Emotional awareness is like a huge, or really just like a great resource in relationships, because otherwise, if we're not aware of our emotions in a given moment, they're going to be driving us, and we're going to be reacting and saying things that we don't want to say, or getting the opposite results because, you know, maybe we want to be closer with somebody, but how it gets communicated is, you know, I'm really mad at you and now I'm yelling at you. And I mean, how do you feel when someone yells at you? Like, what do you want to do?
Shitty.
Do you want to get closer to them, or you want to run away?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, like if you are like more aware of your emotions and more aware of like what you actually want in a given moment. So like if you are wanting that connection and more closeness, instead of, and maybe you are feeling angry, right? And you want to yell, instead of going with that impulse of yelling, asking yourself like, okay, like how can I very vulnerably express what I want here?
Yeah, it's about explaining why you feel that way, like why you're angry or why you're mad, which is like, it's hard when you're just getting yelled at or someone's mad at you and you don't know why.
Yeah.
Like that's like some of the worst feelings I've ever had is like, this person's mad at me and I'm like, I don't really think I did much wrong in this scenario.
Defensive, and then,
well, like not even get defensive, but I just kind of, this is like, I get anxious. I'm like, I don't really know what to do in this scenario because I actually deep down, I don't really know why they're mad. Like they're just yelling at me and making me feel like I did something wrong. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't fucking know what you want.
Yeah.
Like, so.
I mean, even if they are being explicit about why they're mad, like if they're being aggressive about it, like it's hard to even listen.
Yeah.
Because most of us get like triggered and anxious, scared when someone is being aggressive, and like we're not able to think, we're not able to listen when we're in that state.
Yeah.
Would you define emotional intelligence as being able to differentiate an emotion and then communicate that in a clear, concise way?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of emotional intelligence. Being able to understand what you're feeling and articulate that to somebody else in a way that they could understand and empathize with. It could also be kind of like picking up on other people's emotions through like body language and, I don't know, just energy. It's also more recently something that I've been working on is learning how to be with my emotions, like especially the uncomfortable ones. So like anything around fear or shame or just like anything really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us are taught to push down our emotions, right? Like it's too much. Like no one ever taught me how to handle this emotion. And every time I had big emotions when I was a kid, I was punished or I was neglected. So I'm just going to push these emotions down.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go anywhere. They're still going to be inside of you. And they also, like, long-term effects, like, they're going to show up as mental and physical symptoms. Like, I used to have chronic back pain for several years. And it wasn't until I realized that it was, like, a psychological issue and not, like, a structural issue that I was able to start getting more curious about being more open and welcoming to my emotions instead of pushing them away, because our emotions are trying to communicate something important to us. So if we're able to hold that space for those emotions, then we're going to be able to learn more about ourselves, like what we need to feel safe, to feel connected. We might also be able to heal from past like wounds and be able to move on from old strategies that no longer serve us.
It's so crazy. Your brain can literally like trick your body. Like I've had that happen before, where like I get one thought in my head and like I'll like feel it in my stomach, whatever it is. Yeah. Like I'm like,
yeah. There's a reason it's called the gut feeling.
Yeah,
because your body, your gut's speaking to you first.
For sure. But like I feel like your brain wants those. I've just had that happen so many times where like a thought comes in my head and it overwhelms my whole body and like everything shuts down. So it's just crazy how it can take over like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely takes a lot of practice to step away from that impulse of like distracting, pushing away, numbing, and instead creating that space for whatever is coming up in your body and in the present moment.
What are some ways for people to create that space for themselves? Like some advice?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Speaking about it,
Yeah. So a couple different ways that I like to utilize. One is something that I've been doing for a long time, which is journaling. Okay. And I especially like to do this when I've just kind of like observed at this point certain physical symptoms that I experience when I'm feeling anxious or maybe feeling some grief or anxiety. And when I notice those feelings in my body, I'm like, okay, time to slow down. Like, let's reflect on this. So I'll take out my journal and I just start journaling about it. Sometimes that's a really great way for me to hold that space for whatever is going on. And that it might like help surface those emotions. Like sometimes I start journaling and I'm just like bawling while I'm journaling. And I feel like it's just so important. Because otherwise I like just distract myself. I eat junk food, like
right. Just try to mask it in any way.
Exactly. And it's gonna need to come out at some point anyways.
Yeah. So with that, I definitely have seen a difference in things when I started journaling.
Yeah, anxiety is tough. Like I mean, it hasn't happened recently. I feel pretty good recently, but like in big anxious moments, like it takes me over. Like I pace around my house. I feel like my whole body's vibrating and I can't really like eat anything. Like it's just crazy. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me has been when it goes like going back to journaling. It's like I always want to be able to articulate it to myself before I spill it out to somebody else. So journaling has been a way that I always felt like I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I can get these words to a paper and then I can read it back to myself, it's like I'm learning something about myself. So I feel like that's the nail.
Have you ever done that for like hard conversations you knew you were about to have? Or like if you needed to say something, I've done this in relationships where like I literally like have to type it out on my phone first. Like I have to type out like all my thoughts because I know if I start saying it and like get like in the moment and emotional, I won't say what I needed, like truly wanted to say.
Right.
I do that. I have done that a lot.
But I still won't. I'll do that and then I still won't say what I wrote down. I'll still just say I'll get scared and just like say a couple things.
Yeah. I've sent it first sometimes. I've sent it like in a text and then called. Just so like I knew it like got out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And I've had it done back to me. I don't necessarily know if it's like a bad thing. Like I feel like you get it all down on pen and paper and shit thing. So
yeah, I could definitely solve more problems with my writing or words and journaling than I can just speaking.
Yeah, it's so hard to speak how you feel.
To articulate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of safer in a way to have that space to like really be very honest with how you feel and then kind of see where that goes. Whereas opposed to if you're like in conversation with somebody, like you're dealing also with like a dynamic of like, how are they responding? Like, like, so yeah, I think that's like a really great practice. Like when you're having like a difficult conversation or you're about to, I think that's a really great tool to, kind of like plan out what you want to say before a difficult conversation, because sometimes, we don't say what we want to say when it's in the heat of the moment. And by being able to just like sit down and journal, like you can get out all of your big emotions in the paper, right? And you don't necessarily have to share every single thing that you write down. Like sometimes it's nice to just like rant and then get to like, okay, like what is like my core need here? Like what do I need to express to this person so that we can resolve this and still like have a healthy connection.
It's like journaling all these things down and then taking out the highlighter afterwards and look at maybe that's what
yeah.
Well, a journal's not gonna look at you funny back
for sure.
Exactly.
That is true.
Word vomiting.
I feel like journaling has become a big thing. Like do you find yourself like if you journal too, like do you find yourself journaling more in the moment, like right away when you're having those feelings like you're journaling, or do you do it like I feel like a lot of people do it before they go to bed or like at a certain time at night.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
what do you do? Because me personally, I actually have a journal, but in the heat of the moment, what I do, like if I'm feeling a certain type of way, I literally pull out my notes app on my phone, and that's like kind of my journal right there in the moment. And that's like helped me a ton. I'll even go back and read some of them, and it's like crazy. Just like you get a month out and you like find that note and you're like, holy shit, I was feeling that way.
Yeah.
So you're like, damn. Yeah, I didn't even know I could type that.
I'm offended by myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I definitely do the same thing. It kind of like makes me think of like, you know, when you want to like scream into something, like
Yeah.
you just
I feel like that's what it's been like.
yeah, sometimes you just kind of like you have to get that emotion out somehow, and that for me has been like a safe space for me to be able to do that. Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes if I'm not like with my journal, I will also like type it up in my phone.
So you're more in the moment journaler than like a certain time.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where I've been more of a like ritual. Okay, like I'm doing it either the first thing in the morning, or the times I've done it before bed. That was when I was still in school, and I just had a lot of anxiety right before bed.
Yeah.
Because I'd be thinking about all these things I need to get done, and
before bed is the worst.
Oh, with you. That's very nice.
Yeah, my mind races.
Yeah, thankfully it's not that bad anymore now that I'm not in school. But journaling really helped because it just kind of like for me, it's kind of like just clearing out your email, right? Like just getting all that junk down on the paper. And if there's anything important that you need to remember for tomorrow, just write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the same way. It's taking practice though. Like I get to a point, it's almost like my eruption. Like I always try to handle things in my head and articulate it, and then I'll just push it off, or just be festering on a thought for the longest time.
Yeah.
Then eventually I'm like, oh my God, I just got to get this written down, and then I write it down, and it just goes away.
Yeah.
It takes me a while sometimes to
actually do it.
Point.
No, it does for me too.
And then I have to make a freaking journal entry again. Like I start shaming myself for feeling that way, and then I do it, and then it's better.
It helps for sure.
I'm still trying to get over that.
Yeah.
That like, damn it, I'm in another funk, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, that's also very common. Like just, you know, feeling like having those experiences of like, wow, like I'm healed. Like I feel so much better. And then another experience happens and you're like, what? Like I thought we were over this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just going to be life.
Right. It's not linear ever.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So you develop the coping skills over time.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself like, wait, I've been through things like this or worse things than this, and then this is how I got over it. So let me just get back to that. It's not just I'm healed, magic, never gonna feel bad again. It's like, wait, I'm healed because I learned these coping skills. Let me just go back to those coping skills, then move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're never gonna be perfect. Like it's just never gonna work that way.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to share another way that you can really like increase your tolerance for feeling uncomfortable emotions. And that's kind of more of like a little bit of a meditative practice. You know, you find a quiet, safe space to sit down, close your eyes, start with some deep breaths just to connect with the body in the present moment. And then you just start to kind of like notice any sensations that you feel in your body. And that might feel hard for you if you're not used to paying attention to your body. Like if you're used to stopping down your emotions, you're probably also not paying attention to your body because your body is sending you signals all the time.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, maybe you're practicing when you're feeling upset or like anxious. And so you close your eyes and then you start to notice like, oh man, I feel some tension, some tightness in my chest right now. And that's kind of like the loudest sensation that I'm feeling in my body. So I'm just going to sit here with that sensation and I'm going to do my best to welcome it. Like instead of being like, go away, I'm going to almost like see it as like this little kid crying on the street, and I'm gonna be like, hey, like I'm gonna sit with you for as long as you need. I'm here. If you need something to say, if you need to say something, like I'm listening and just sit with that sensation.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I feel like I have done that before, especially, I started going to therapy this year, and she asked me like what it feels like when I am anxious, like when I'm really anxious or like thoughts over, consuming me, whatever. And I was like, I don't know if I'm like actually breathing. Like I don't like I'm not like breathing normally for sure. And I was like I said, I pace around and I'm just like kind of like brain's going in a million different directions. She's like, cool. So what you're going to do next time is breath work and just take deep breaths.
Right.
And reconnect everything a little bit. And it genuinely, it helped.
Yeah.
Like I just sit there and like actually like focus on my breathing and not necessarily like just all my thoughts or like what I got to do to fix it.
Yeah.
Like I kind of just take a break for a second. And it's helped a ton. But yeah, like connecting with your body and knowing what actually is happening. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's definitely a big part of it is like, because you are focusing on what is actually happening.
Yeah.
Instead of all these thoughts that are not necessarily real. Like we have this tendency of like creating fantasies in our mind of like why someone did this, do they like me? Are they judging me? And that's going to create more suffering.
You also go to like worst case scenario. A lot of people do. They just jump to worst case scenario of like, oh, this is it. This is over. Like whatever the case is. And that's not good. And it's not always true. Like sometimes you just need time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to like what is true in the moment, which is what you're feeling in your body, can really help illuminate like what's actually going on. And it gives you more choice of how to respond.
Yes.
Instead of just reacting.
Yes. Looking at what like the actual real life picture is and like what is actually happening is something I've been trying to do a lot lately. Like just being like, no, this is actually the real scenario. It's not the stuff that you put in your head that how it was supposed to go. Like this is real life scenario and this is how it worked out and this is how it's going to work out or could work out.
Yeah.
I love what you said about looking at it as like a child on the street.
Yeah.
Because it's like a normal person wouldn't just see like a crying child if you're just there with them and just walk right past them,
Yeah.
You'd go and see what's going on and sit with them and until it's healed, And if maybe you're that person that would just walk right past them, maybe it's time to learn a little compassion and then have some compassion for yourself. And then, I love what you said about that.
Yeah, talking to yourself and asking yourself why you feel that way is a big thing.
Having compassion for yourself enough to sit there and allow yourself to sit there in that feeling and investigate a little bit. That's huge.
Yeah.
You guys had me meditating a little bit when you were saying. Oh, I ain't gonna lie, I was doing the same thing. Yeah. Meditating is kind of hard for me too, though. I've actually tried to meditate. Yeah. Does your brain just like wander?
I have to be in a group setting.
Really?
Don't know why.
A group setting? My mom bought me this like headband. It has 2 speakers on it, but it's like it closes like, I don't know what it's called.
Like a sensory deprivation?
Yeah, it's kind of like a blindfold or like a sleeping mask.
Okay.
But it like goes around your whole head and it's got 2 speakers and it's Bluetooth. So like I put on like Spotify meditations.
Ooh.
And I've tried to do that, but I always just like catch my brain like wandering and I'm like, I don't know what the heck this thing just said. Yeah. That could be an ADD thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I've done sensory deprivation tanks before. They're pretty fun.
Yeah. I've never done one. No.
It's crazy.
Is it?
You just float in this.
Because it's like the same temperature as your body, right? So you just kind of like float.
And then it's just the water's, and they're salty enough so you can.
Oh, yeah. You're buoyant. Yeah.
It's next level. You'd be in I think I was in there for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It feels like 20 minutes.
Dang.
Yeah. It's pretty fun.
Is there music or is it just dead silent?
I think there can be music if you want there to be. But yeah, it's really just tapping in. I guess I don't have to be in a group setting, but like a yoga class or something like that, I'm always...
Just being guided.
Yeah, being guided. That's what it is. I can't really self-guide myself through meditation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, I'm curious, like, when you guys do struggle with, like, your thoughts roaming around during meditation, like, what do you feel? Like, what comes up for you?
I don't know if I struggle too much with my thoughts roaming around. I feel like I kind of just to suppress them a little bit. sometimes. And it takes me a while to get to the point where I can actually be like, okay, here's my genuine thought. Like it's like I have a million stimulants, and then it takes me a few minutes to get off of the sensations of the stimulants before I can tap into my real thoughts. Does that make sense?
So what is your goal in meditation exactly?
Just to stop the stimulation and like stop
all the
be calm.
Yeah. To be more calm, I think, and to stop getting ahead and just worry. My biggest thing is I worry so much about like a to-do list. Like a to-do list is the devil to me, because I'm like, everything's daunting, even if it's a fun thing to do or like something I'm looking forward to. If I see a list of things I have to do, I'm like, man, I have to do so many things. So
I get that.
I'm usually just trying to sit with it and be like, wait, no. Or just trick myself into being like, okay, I get to do these things. It's not daunting. It's going to be one thing at a time. So that's usually my goal. But it takes me a while to get to the point, to get to that point, to get to that outcome, I guess.
So when you meditate, it's more, it's less like focused on like going back to the breath and like mindfulness. And well, I guess it's a different type of mindfulness and the way that you're trying to like change your mindset.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to do, is connect more to those things and be more present in order to get to that outcome of not having all that weight on my shoulders, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I just said it in a different I said my goal, then I said my tendency.
I think my issue is like, it's not like I think about something specifically. It's like, it's hard for me to get to that place of like calm where I can focus. Like I feel like my brain is just like always kind of running a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard for me to like get to that level of meditate, like during meditation or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Where I can just solely be like in the moment and focus on that. I feel like my brain just goes a lot of different directions.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the goal of meditation is to be in a constant state of presence?
Yeah. Or relaxation.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. That's a very common thought about meditation. Something that's really helped me is someone telling me that meditation is more like lifting weights. So you're getting the reps in, like, and the reps in meditation are bringing your attention back to your breath or back to whatever is the anchor.
So if you veer off, just like making sure you get back there every time.
So it doesn't even matter, like, if you end up having all these thoughts, or you spend like even 10 minutes like thinking about like, what am I going to do today? And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm meditating. Let's go back to my breath. Like, that's a rep.
Okay.
And so that's something
I've never heard that before, and that's so cool.
As a rep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
20 minutes later.
Yeah.
Back to the breath.
Yeah.
2. Let's see if I can get 10.
Yeah. So like, when you look at meditation in that way, it feels a little bit more like, okay, like I am doing something here. And yeah, your thoughts aren't necessarily something to be aggressive towards and be like, go away. But like the metaphor that I've heard that I really like to imagine is that thoughts are kind of like clouds passing by, and you can just let them pass by. Like, you don't need to interact with them. You can be like, oh, hey, that's a cloud. That's a thought. I'm going to go back to my breath.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Because I feel like that I get stuck on that so much. Like,
staring at the cloud, it's like,
stare at the cloud, I'm like,
oh, like all the
oh, new cloud. Squirrel. The dog barking
in the street.
Yeah.
Coming in.
Just got hit by a car.
I love a good metaphor.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I've never heard that before, and I almost feel like guilty when I'm like, well, shit, I just thought about something else for 10 minutes.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
All that.
I read something, I think we mentioned this on the podcast before. I read something that was like, you are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
They're above you. Like, they are a different realm of you.
And all your thoughts aren't like reality.
Right.
Yeah.
You can just make things up in your head.
Yeah.
That one stuck with me for whatever reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our thoughts are an accumulation of everything that we've soaked in throughout our life.
Yeah.
So like, thoughts could be like, we don't even really sometimes realize that they could be like from like way in our past, like in our childhood. but they feel like us. They feel like a part of our identity.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, just this is kind of a sidebar, but like just personally about like your coaching and everything. Do you coach a lot of single people or is it mainly couples?
So I'm working one-on-one with people right now. I am going to be certified.
Or I guess not couples, but like people in a relationship.
Right, yeah. So I've mostly worked with people in a relationship.
Okay.
The most common case that I find that comes to me is people who are kind of on the brink of, should I stay or should I go?
Yep.
And a lot of the times what we work on is helping them become a lot more clear on what their needs are and how have they been betraying themselves or abandoning themselves in order for this relationship to work. So a lot of work in helping them see how they're accountable so that they can actually take action.
Yeah.
See if their partner is responsive and also willing to meet them halfway, do the work as well. Or sometimes they realize like their partner isn't willing. They're not, at a space where they can keep growing with them, or it's just not a compatible match. Like they're going down different paths. So sometimes my clients end up leaving their relationships.
Mm-hmm. Is it ever hard for you to, are you trying to kind of paint a picture for them to be able to read, or are you more direct? You know what I mean? Like, is it ever hard for you to just be super direct and be like, well, this guy or this girl is not putting up what they need and you got to see it? Or are you just constantly trying to paint a picture for people to recognize things? Because that's got to be a hard balance. Because I feel like sometimes I just want to be like, look, like this is how it is,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do is reflecting back what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding. Because sometimes people say they want something but what they're sharing is, it doesn't line up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just kind of connecting some dots and helping them really like look at themselves. Because often when they're not in alignment with what they actually want, it's because they've been like just avoiding looking at themselves and what they're doing. And
it all goes back to yourself. I think that's the one thing I've taken from this. Like It's all about looking at yourself and what your needs truly are.
Yeah.
How would you say, or what would you say is the biggest or the best way for a couple that maybe has lost trust or is maybe looking to gain more trust or get it back? Have you dealt with that a lot? And if so, is there like a strategy that you have in mind that is a good way to, obtain trust if that's missing in a relationship?
Yeah. So kind of to loop back to what I talked about a little bit earlier about like knowing how to help the other person feel safe, seen, soothed, supported, the four core needs of a secure relationship, and getting to know their insecurities so that you can like have discussions with your partner of like, okay, like I know this triggers you. How can I communicate this topic in a way that helps you feel safe? Or when you are feeling triggered, like, or, we're in conflict, like, what is our strategy? Like, having some sort of agreement of, like, how you handle conflict when it happens, that can be really huge. Also, taking accountability, that can really help rebuild trust.
Right back to it.
Yeah.
That's the word of the day right there.
Word of the day is accountability.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that the biggest thing, everything keeps coming back, like we talk, like relationship coach, everything keeps coming back to the self, and taking things on to yourself.
Yeah.
It's like we do so much to try to find the right person for us, or like, you know what I'm saying, or like be the perfect couple. But if you just look in at yourself, there's so many things. Like that's everything.
But also, I feel like both people have to be willing to do that.
Right.
Like it can't just be you. Because then if you're taking all the accountability, you're going to eventually, I feel like, run into the ground, which I think I've done that to myself before.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. That's why
I got to a point where I was like, I felt like I was always wrong no matter what. Like the other person overpowered me, and again, like I'm pretty chill and go with the flow, but the other person would overpower me, and I would just, no matter what I would say was going to be right. So I stopped saying things. Like I got really bad at communicating in relationships for a long time. I don't feel that way anymore. And you actually said something that was a question I wanted to ask. This is a super basic question. There's a reason behind it.
Okay.
Do you believe in like when you know, or like you find like you have the butterflies, find the right person? I ask that because like I feel like that's something I struggle with in like I'm single. So, you know, I've started to feel like shit, maybe I have commitment issues, or maybe I'm emotionally unavailable because, you know, I've like tried to date and I know deep down I don't have commitment issues. Like I have committed to people in the past. I've had very long-term relationships. I mean, I lived with a girl 2 years for 2 years basically. But I also feel like I struggle in dating because I can get along with almost anybody. Like I can mesh with a lot of people. So like I don't necessarily ever know when I'm like, okay, I have like strong enough feelings to do this. And I'm like really struggling with that. And then I feel guilty when I'm like not committing or like not able to, because like I have like something holding me back, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, dating can be really tough. Because like, you know, even if you're not super charismatic and get along with a lot of people, like it's easy to fall in love. Like you can fall in love with so many different people and have these wonderful feelings and feel like, wow, this is my person. And then realize like, oh, wow, like, you know, I haven't actually gotten to know this person very well.
Yeah.
And maybe like the person I'm falling in love with is actually a projection of like who I want in a partner, but not the actual person. So, I mean, I think it is good to balance your feelings and like how do you feel around that person with also like, is this like relationship going to meet my relational needs? Is, you know, do we have common values? Do we have common like lifestyle wants?
There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of levers you gotta pull and match up, and I don't know.
I mean, it's a big decision to.
It is a big decision.
Lock yourself,
and I don't take it lightly.
Yeah,
like,
I think you should.
Yeah, for sure.
It's healthy,
but sometimes I feel like an asshole when it's just like I don't know. Like I don't really know if I feel enough to be in a relationship, and it has nothing to do with the other person. Like part of me is like struggle with that. I'm like, you're like great. Like you're so cool, like you're awesome, but I'm just like I'm not there.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah. I think it does take a lot of reflection on like what you really want in a partner, how you want to feel in a relationship, and what are your non-negotiables and what are your negotiables. Right?
Yeah.
Feeling in general, probably non-negotiable. Like, are you feeling something?
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you want to be around that person? Do you want to show them love and affection? Do you admire them? Do you have respect for them?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I'm in a weird spot in life right now. Like it's.
I don't know if it's weird, dude. I think you put a lot of pressure on yourself too.
Oh, I do for sure. Yeah.
I think you're doing it good. You're diving into like discovering all these things. Like some people go through freaking relationships for like 10 years and they don't even know half the stuff that you know about relationships.
That's true.
So you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
That's true.
I'm sick of it.
I definitely feel like guilt when it doesn't work out, and like I'm the one feeling on the other side like I don't want it. Like it's really tough for me. Yeah.
Well, like you said earlier, like it's all about like not looking at it as like, oh, I failed again, but like, okay, like, well, how can I learn from that experience?
Yeah.
They're all learning experiences.
Yep.
Even when you're in a relationship that's going to last your whole life, you're constantly going to be learning if you're open to it.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of feel like I asked that question of like, do you believe in like when you know, because I'm like, maybe that'll happen to me. Like, hopefully that does, where I'm like, all right, I know this is it. Like, this is what I want to do in this moment, which I say that now being single, but like I've had that feeling before.
Yeah.
Like I have dated other people before being like, oh yeah, I want this. But I guess I'm just like waiting for that to happen.
So maybe now, are you like just waiting for that to happen? If it doesn't happen, then you're like, well, I'm not feeling it. I guess I shouldn't explore.
No,
it's not on impact.
I wouldn't say that, no. because like I do take things very slow. Like the last girlfriend I had, I think she got mad at me because waiting like a month or two to like actually ask her out. But so I do take things slow and like maybe too slow where I overthink it too much. But no, I don't think like that. Like it's more of like a slow burn in a lot of scenarios. But then like once I do commit, like I'm all in. Like so I know I can commit, but I just feel guilty about it sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, Are you like showing up and being vulnerable with that person as you're getting to know them?
I'd say, I would say so. Yeah. I think I'm a pretty vulnerable person. Yeah. Like I'm pretty open now. I used to not be, for sure. But I've learned from my mistakes there and been open. There's definitely times where I still hold back, especially in like, again, when it's newer and like I'm taking things slow. Like I'm not going to be the most open book in the world and, you know, just lay everything out on the table from the start. But you said maybe that is the right thing I need to do, and just like be honest and open about where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a busy person, and like I've had a lot of changes the past 4 months too, and I try and give myself some grace on that. Like my brain moves in a lot of different directions throughout the week. And I mean, who doesn't want to find the person? But at the same time, I'm struggling to be like, oh yeah, can I put in all of the effort into a relationship right now? I don't know. Yeah. So it's tough.
Yeah.
A lot of different ways my brain moves during the day.
That is interesting that you asked that about her, like working with singles versus working with couples. Yeah, I never really thought of that. Like a relationship coach, like going to a relationship coach if you're single. And like you said, you deal with a lot of people, like, not that it's their last resort, but they're having conflict, so they're trying to get something solved, right? So I guess that's different. It's like,
yeah, I didn't really think about it that way. I mean, that makes way more sense. If you're a relationship coach, you would deal with a person that's in a relationship. But as a single person, like not me specifically, but I think some people really struggle with dating and like getting into a relationship or like finding a relationship. Like if I was in that boat, you know, I might reach out to a coach. Like I think that would be awesome.
I think people should.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you are the safe space.
You know? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, would you say the same? Like, would you want single people to reach out to you too for that type of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I have worked with, and I'm, you know, currently working with at least like one client who is single, and our work together, you know, it might not be necessarily about him and somebody else, but like, what are his own emotional struggles? And
so it's a guy too?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, not in a bad way. I just feel like guys would be the last person to do that.
Yeah.
So props to him, whoever he is.
Yeah. I mean, my experience so far is I've worked about 50-50 with women and men.
Love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool, you know, different experiences. But yeah, you can like, you know, sometimes we spend time reflecting on their past relationships and like what are their patterns and what's working for them, what's not working for them, what do they want to advocate for in the future. Sometimes it's also not even just romantic relationships, but like your relationship with your family or a friend. My very first client wasn't in a relationship, but he had some struggles with some of his friends, and he, you know, wasn't really used to being very explicit with his feelings and his needs. But like, I remember like one of the first things that we worked on is he had a friend like from childhood, and he had a habit of making jokes about my clients in a way that felt offensive for him.
Yeah.
But he never said anything all these years. And so he was at the point where he wasn't sure if he wanted this relationship anymore because he felt really uncomfortable by the jokes that he was making. So we, you know, kind of talked about it, and I helped him like create a plan of action to have a conversation with that friend, because ultimately the decision was to leave the friendship, not say anything, right?
Not deal with it at all. Just
bye. Or try. Like, advocate for what you want and see what happens.
Yeah. And if it's not reciprocated, then you know to leave.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, worst case scenario, yeah, you just end up with the same result.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe it feels a little uncomfortable, but it's also like really good practice for your future relationships.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about relationships and being like a romantic relationship. It's the same thing. If you're afraid, or maybe something doesn't offend you like back in the day and then it accumulates and then, but time goes on so long and it's just been happening. It's so normalized and it's like you're afraid to say something or speak up. So then you have to have a whole strategy to even do that.
And then when you don't, and it comes out of nowhere, like the other person probably does take it offensively and be like, where the hell did that come from?
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Because then it's just like, well, who are you?
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you changed. That offends you? You never said anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that can be crazy. Well, I think this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, we might have to have you back because honestly, like I feel like there's so much more we could dive into. So we really appreciate you coming on and everything. Is there anything else that you want to cover about yourself or shout out your Instagram? What's your Instagram?
Yeah, tell people how to find you, your website.
Yeah, so no, I'm glad that we've been talking about the self because my business is called The Empowered Self Relationship Coaching. You can find me on Instagram at the.empowered.self. And
cool. Amazing.
Well, that was awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for coming. I feel like I feel great.
I feel a little mind blown. Like I'm a little mind fucked a little bit.
It'll be good to move into a good episode talking to a married couple.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
So,
Gabriella, thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming. This was awesome.
Yeah. Cool.
That's a wrap.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm finally on my way to all my better days. Don't care what people say, I make the world my stage. Life is a beach, I hit the ocean trying to catch a wave.